Good afternoon. I'm Tracy Young with the Carbon County Prevention Network for another Lunch and Learn series with Carbon County Higher Ed and Carbon County Memorial Hospital. Today we have Ashley Schluck, our Traffic Safety Resource Prosecutor for the state of Wyoming, to talk to us about Kratom.
All right. Y'all ready for me? Yeah? Okay. All right. So as Tracy said, my name's Ashley Schluck. I'm the Traffic Safety Resource Prosecutor for the state of Wyoming. And Tracy wanted to have me back so we could talk about Kratom. So I got lots of slides here, so we'll just dive right into it today. So here's just some of the things. So I found this, it's actually from Bighorn, but interestingly enough, it says the new illegal drug, and we'll talk about the legality of it, but it is definitely growing in popularity. As you can see, this was written and put on the internet on July 23rd of this year, July 31st of this year. So definitely we're starting to see a lot more Kratom here in the state of Wyoming. So much so that it is starting to get a discussion around it, when before people were not really discussing this very much at all. So here, as you can see, Colorado just started to regulate this drug. It passed their legislative session this year. Essentially, their regulation for the drug is that anybody who is not 21 is not allowed to purchase it. So they do have a 21 and over purchasing threshold that will begin July 1st of 2024. So they have moved to do this. They've looked at doing it for a long period of time, and I think they finally got kind of the regulation that they wanted in that regard. I think there was other concerns with it, but the first and foremost was just to get it kind of out of the hands of youth and kids. So as you can see too, interestingly enough, they have kind of associated Kratom use with, the legalization component of marijuana, and so those two things have been associated with one another, both through research and through surveys and self-reported studies. This one's coming from the 2019 National Survey on Drug Use and Health, and so they did see a rise in Kratom. Interestingly enough too, we have seen kind of a rise in Kratom as the opioid epidemic kind of came to a head. Prescribers are not prescribing opioids as readily or as frequently as they used to, and so now people are trying to find alternative medications or alternative things that will tap into what they need them to do. So with those prescriber restrictions and some of them prescribing less and stuff, we're seeing a increase in that as well. But with that kind of association with marijuana use, we're definitely seeing it in the dispensaries. And so when I was here last time, I talked about the hemp-derived psychoactive intoxicants that are being sold. And most of those dispensaries in town or across the state of Wyoming that are selling those hemp-derived intoxicant products are also selling Kratom. So they are really going hand in hand, and people are using them with one another. As well as we're seeing a kind of a pop-up of products that are containing both the hemp-derived intoxicants as well as the Kratom kind of combined with one another. So all of our research is kind of a little bit older because Kratom is not something that is well researched right now, but it's starting to gain a little bit momentum. But as you can see, in 2021, they did that national survey, and they found that about 1.7 million Americans between 12 and up were using Kratom or had used Kratom in 2021. And so interestingly, they do think that this is kind of a severely underreported study just because it is self-reported and only caught a little under actually 9,000 people. So it was like 8,700 people that they were able to get that. But they did find in some of their other studies that they did find where they were looking at rates of addiction and rates of other disorders. And so while that's not necessarily a causation, but there's definitely a correlation, they did find that stimulant use disorders and opiate use disorders were between 6.5 and 18 times higher respectively for Kratom users than non-users. So it does create maybe not create, I guess, they are linked with one another. Who's to say what came first, chicken or egg, but they do have causation where they're seeing that people who are using Kratom are 16 to 18 times more likely to either have a stimulant use disorder or an opioid use disorder. So obviously pretty concerning with what we've got with that, because it is something that people can get pretty easily. Same study here, they did find that Kratom users were more likely to have serious substance abuse profiles than non-users, and those users were more likely to have those serious substance abuse with alcohol, tobacco, and cannabis or marijuana. So really this was kind of the first study that they had, this was in 2020, to kind of really look at and delve into Kratom use. So interestingly, 2020 is when we started seeing a lot more of it. It kind of does coincide with that opioid epidemic where, we saw a pretty big shift of things. And so they just started to start looking at this. But Kratom has been around for an extremely long time. And in fact, they think that it first came kind of over to the United States during the Vietnam War, and you'll see why that is and where that is here in a little bit when we talk about its origins. But really, it's been here for a very long time. Here is another study that was recently done where they found that a third of the lifetime Kratom users had a substance use disorder, and that about a fourth of them had experienced some mental health issues, specifically major depression. And so they did find that there was lifetime use association with those substance use disorders with opioid stimulants and sedatives. So it just backed up the survey that they had given a couple years earlier. This study was done in 2019, and so they found all of those things. Okay, so really for Kratom, the trends in use, it's a drug, it's a leaf, as you can probably tell by all the pictures. So it comes off of a tree, but it was really used by Southeast Asian countries as kind of a rural pain relief. And it also was used to kind of help with ailments such as coughing and fatigue. So back over there, they do a lot of hard manual work, and so they found that chewing on these leaves, that it did help fight that fatigue and that they got a little more energy. And so they also were using it as kind of a social drug. I think after they started to discover that it had good uses for that manual work, and then they also have it with religious type of ceremonies within their villages. In the United States, we have seen two pretty prominent trends that we have seen with Kratom. So the first one being the use of Kratom to help with withdrawal symptoms from opioid dependence. We had seen a lot of it actually more so in the rural areas than in kind of the cities. Maybe some of that was just because other drugs were available, such as heroin and other, black market prescriptions for opioids, but we are starting to see kind of an increase everywhere with this drug. So in urban settings, they were, and we have seen a lot of kind of bars or cafes starting to pop up that sell these drugs. And really getting people into using these in kind of a more social setting. So the bars, there's a ton of them in Colorado. They're usually with kava type products too, which is another drug that gives some stimulating effects. And that kava is a root, but this plant and this leaf, they're definitely having more. And they call them and they promote them as non-alcoholic bars. So they're really saying these are a healthier alternative to using alcohol, and come drink at our bars because you're going to get a different effect, but you're not going to have that alcohol. So they really are popping up kind of everywhere. I've got a couple of pictures of that at the end of this presentation. Okay, so as you can see too, we are starting to see an expansion of Kratom vendors and stores and places where they are. Back in the day, you could kind of find, even like 10 years ago, you could find them at like kind of, I don't know, like Hot Topic type of stores in the mall where they have a lot of paraphernalia and other stuff in them. You could find them in smoke shops and stuff, but you really kind of had to look for them. Now they're becoming a little bit more prominent, and we are starting to see a lot more marketing towards them, a lot more advertising towards them, and actually more shops with that. So as I said earlier, that it goes hand in hand with that cannabis use, and we are starting to see a lot more of that in the United States in combination with cannabis use in those dispensaries. We even have them at that Platt hemp company that you guys have in town. They have Kratom products as well. Okay, so here from a survey they just found, this is again survey, so it's self-reported, but it just does give some insight into it. It's not going to be the end-all be-all because it's self-reported. It probably is either underestimating the actual use, or it's not tapping into all the various populations and demographics. But what they found was that it was being primarily used by middle-aged men, 31 to 50 years old, with an income of more than $35,000, and individuals who had private insurance. So about over half for all of those different demographics. And they also found that of all of the users, so not just those that were predominantly using, but of all of the users, 68% of those, so almost 2/3 were, actually over 2/3, were actually using it to self-treat pain, so that tie-in with opioids, and then a third, just at a third, were using it to treat mental conditions. So using it to treat anxiety, using it to treat depression, and so they were doing that as well as the withdrawal symptoms for prescription opioid use. As you can see here, it is a pretty big industry here in the United States. In 2020, so it's probably a lot more now because we have seen market increases in product availability and product sale, but at the time in 2020, it was a $1.13 billion industry here in the United States. So definitely people are using them. There's definitely a demand for them, which is why we started to kind of see an increase in all of these things. So as you can see, this another just example of how that Kratom use and cannabis use go hand in hand with one another, as here are the advertisements for the 420 rush, and the cannabis go right along with an article about how the Kratom business from Colorado is breaking ground in Oregon. So obviously growing past Colorado. This Clean Kratom is an actually pretty big company, so if you look up online, there are a lot of different Kratom stores all over the place that have this Clean Kratom with it. Okay, so big question that we have to ask, is Kratom legal? And it absolutely is here in the state of Wyoming, so they can sell it, they can use it, they can do whatever of it with that. So they're generally legal throughout the United States. There are some communities that actually prohibit or ban the sale or use of them within their city, and there are 6 states throughout the United States that are completely banned, but just know that even though they are legal and totally accessible with things, that the DEA has come out and said that it is a drug of concern. So this became a drug of concern for the DEA in 2020. Prior to that, the DEA in 2016 did look at scheduling it, and they were hoping to make it a Schedule 1. So a Schedule 1 product is one of those things that has no medicinal use or value whatsoever. And so they were going to try to put it on Schedule 1 back in 2016. However, there was a pretty big outcry from the public, which is funny because, you're like, I don't even know if I heard of this in 2016. But there was an outcry from the users of Kratom when this was kind of big in 2016. And they said, the DEA backed off of it and said, you know, we're not going to go there right now because public sentiment is such that we aren't quite sure that we want to completely ban these drugs by putting them on Schedule 1 of our controlled substances list. So there are a lot of countries that have banned the use of these products or the sale of these products, and even some of the places where these products come from in Southeast Asia have banned or restricted this as well. So it is on a list of substances under surveillance or under watch from the WHO. So the World Health Organization, to just keep an eye on them. So definitely something of concern. I think some of this too is just because the use wasn't so widespread, like some people were using, but not a ton of people were using. And so that is why we're still looking at it. We're not sure what we're going to do with that. But here is a map of, you know, where it's legal, where it's not. So as you can see, the red states, there being 6 there, the 2 in the on the East Coast, they're a little bit harder to see because they're smaller. But those 6 states, it is completely illegal and banned to have Kratom. So all of the green states are states where it is legal. As you can see, it's legal here in Wyoming and it's legal all around us. And then the little red dots are places or cities where even though the state is legal, the city itself is a banned substance within that. So there are a couple of cities within legal states that do have these banned and saying, you know, we're not going to do these. So New York is looking at legislation right now. I don't know if anything's come of it, but they do seem to bring it up almost every legislative session. And then Oregon has like a Kratom study where they're looking at it to see whether or not they should ban it, or, you know, what is, you know, the true look of how harmful this is or how many people are using within the state. And then all of the blue states, they have adopted the Consumer Protection Act, so they are very or stricter about the sale of these and really making sure that companies and shops are not selling these with disclaimers and medical claims and not adding it to food because the FDA says that that is not an allowable use of Kratom is to add it to food. So those blue states are doing the Consumer Protection Act where they will go in and shut places down or make them change their practices or give them a cease and desist if they are not abiding by that consumer protection because it is viewed as a more dangerous substance. So as I said, right now it's not a controlled substance at all, even though they did look at making it a controlled substance back in 2016, so 7 years ago. As I said, it's banned in a few states, and there are some places that have restrictions on them. And so other states have imposed age limits or other restrictions on the use, sale, or whatnot. Just like Colorado did this year, they will have that 21 or older to do that. So as I stated too, that they are banned in a lot of the different foreign countries because of, you know, the dangers that are associated with this. So with that being said, even though they are legal products, the FDA has made it very clear that Kratom is not approved for any type of use for a medicinal value or any sort of medical ailment or condition. They do support continued, FDA that is, does support continued research on Kratom to see, you know, whether or not it could potentially have any sort of medicinal value. However, my guess is they are really just looking at the research to kind of maybe potentially ban them at a later date and time or encourage the ban of them. So there's definitely a public safety advisory that was issued by the FDA just a few years ago, basically saying, you know, we didn't really think that there was any sort of death or any sort of overdose associated with Kratom at one point in time. However, we saw an increase of these things back in 2020 and 2021. And so they did issue that warning saying that there are serious concerns because of the risk of a death or a risk of an overdose. So with that being said, kind of in tandem, in 2020, the DEA listed it as a drug of concern. And then they say, you know, to make sure that not to use the substance due to kind of the risk of dependence that comes with it and addiction. So now that we've kind of talked about the legal aspects of it, I'm going to talk about specifically what Kratom is. So as you can see here, these are Kratom trees. These are the leaf is what creates and makes kratom. And so these are all kind of in that Southeast Asia area, as I described. I'll have a picture here in a little bit. Here are two chemicals in it that are in pairing. So mitragine is the first chemical that is considered in pairing that comes out of that leaf plant. And then 7-hydroxymitragine is the other psychoactive component of the leaf of the plant. So as I stated, it is a tropical tree that's native to Southeast Asia. It's known scientifically as Mitragina speciosi, and the reason they call that is that Mitragenia apparently translates into like some sort of pope and hat. So they say that because the leaf looks like a pope hat, that is where that name kind of came from. And then I talked about those two major psychoactive ingredients just now and showed you the chemical structure. So as you can see here, that is where they come from. It does have some different properties and different effects based upon not only the region, but based upon the color of the leaf and the maturity of the leaf, and we'll kind of go into that a little bit deeper here in just a few seconds. But in Asian cultures, it is used medicinally. As I said, they use it to treat coughs, they use it to treat pain, and they use it for, stimulation and energy. And so that is why it's used there. I don't feel like it was abused over there, kind of like we're seeing in the United States. Leave it to the United States to kind of like exploit things and go above and beyond, because that's how we are. We're creatures of excess here, and so they don't really use it like that there. But we have seen a lot of European countries that have started banning this substance for the same reasons that we are kind of seeing here in the United States. So here are just kind of the the four big regions where these come from. Bali is a huge one, Malaysia, Thailand, and Indonesia. And so this is where these plants are coming from and where they grow most of them. And so obviously, in order to get kratom here in the United States, we have to have it come from overseas because it does not grow here naturally. And I haven't heard of any place or anywhere growing them in a greenhouse or anything like that yet. That may come, but maybe all of our area is dedicated to the cannabis plant. So it is coming from elsewhere. Most, if not all, of the products are coming from overseas, or at least the substance to create or make the product is coming from China, Asia, and other places. So here are some other names for kratom. And actually, just to go back to kind of the Americanization of things, it actually is not pronounced kratom, it's kratom, but we pronounce it kratom, and that's how people know it. So kratom is the appropriate phrase or how you say it from Asia, but that's not how we say it. So here are some other names. It can be referred to as kratom, kratom, any sort of like variation on the word. And then we've got some other slang from different areas. So tang is kind of a universal term. Kratom, ithang, tom, those all are kind of to the Thailand area or in relation to those leaves that come from Thailand. Ketam is and bayak or bayak are more Malaysian. Mambom is how they say it in the Philippines. And then it's also known kind of on the streets here as an herbal speedball. So it has that definite herbal component to it, but tells you what it does by referring to it and associating it with what we know as a regular speedball here in the United States. So it comes in all different forms. It comes in capsules. It comes in pills. I have capsules there twice. It comes in extracts, different forms of extracts. So they have pastes, they have tinctures or oils. They have resin, which is a little bit thicker than an oil. You can get just the leaves whole, crushed, or powdered. And then we do have some availability from retail retailers for gummies and chocolates and other types of tea, seltzers, etc. Just because that is what is popular right now with all the other drugs. And so, may as well bottle it up and sell it, because that is the way that the other drugs look in the hemp dispensary, so to speak. So traditionally in Asia, it started out that the workers in the fields would just chew on these leaves. They found that it gave them a little more energy, so that's how that kind of started, is they would just chew on the whole leaves or suck on them and then swallow that raw plant. So then they figured out if you dry it out and you grind it into a powder, that it's easier to either put it in a capsule and take it that way, or it's easier to mix into water to make a tea. And so they started, really that's where you see kind of the Kratom products, is you see them in capsules or powders. Mostly that's how they present themselves here, if it is just the straight raw form of the Kratom. And so they do make those teas. That's typically how they are used in Southeast Asia areas for, the medicinal treatment, the Eastern treatment of pain, etc. But they do have that as well. So it can be smoked. It really isn't smoked a whole lot, but if they do smoke it, they just crush it like a powder and roll it up into a smoking paper and then smoke it that way, just like you would, say, a joint or some sort of other plant material or herbal product. So Kratom is really horrible tasting. Apparently, I don't know, I've never tried it, but apparently it's very horrible tasting. It has a very bitter, very sour taste to it. So generally speaking, when they do put it in other things, so when they make the tea, they definitely add lemon juice to kind of cut that bitterness and take some of the sting out of the taste of it. And so they do add things to it, sugar, honey, etc., to help with that. They do say that, Kratom eaters, so those that chew on the leaves, will eat, 1 to 3 leaves at a time, and they'll chew them 3 to 10 times a day. So it's something that will keep them throughout the day, keep on going and going. We've also seen, as I said, kind of with the bars opening up, the Kratom bars, the Kratom cafes, we are seeing a lot more cocktails and concoctions being made. So here's one that they call the 4x100. It has become pretty popular because it sometimes can mimic the effect of alcohol. So it is a non-alcoholic drink that can mimic alcohol, and people can take it. So they definitely have moved kind of into that realm. All right, so really, and we'll talk about this a little bit more when we talk about effects on the body, but Kratom, as with most drugs, the effect or the high that somebody gets is going to depend on how much they take, the potency or the strength, even the strains. So there's different strains, as I'm going to talk about here in a little bit, and how the product was formed. So different regions have different types of effects or strains, if you will, or different leaves. And so then method of ingestion will impact how high somebody gets, how quickly somebody gets high, whether they're chewing it, whether they're drinking it, whether they're smoking it. And then, the other things that can affect this are underlying medical conditions, poly-drug use, so if they're using other drugs with it. And so the interesting thing too is because they are not regulated by the FDA, the products can really vary in their potency or strength, and sometimes people just don't know. They can say that one product has this much in it, it could have more, it could have less. You kind of buyer beware, you're just taking at your own risk. So the products can be different, and even the same product can be different on a different day or different on a different batch. And so you may have unpredictable effects with the Kratom because of that. So with that too, some of the Kratom effects we've seen have been kind of associated with the contaminants that have been contained within the products as well. So they have found a lot of heavy metals in the products. They've found other sorts of substances. They found bacteria. So there was recently a salmonella outbreak in Kratom products, so people were consuming salmonella with their Kratom, which makes sense because it is a plant material, so there is always that that risk of having those types of things. So with the potential for potency, really it kind of depends on the variety, as I talked about, the age of the plant, so how long the plant has been in existence, its maturity, so is it is it kind of a sapling, or is it something that has been well established and been around for a long time, the environment with which the plant was grown, so depending on whether there was a drought condition or there was water, it was flooding type of conditions, or whether it was cold or hot or whatnot, it can really direct the direction of the way that these leaves are potent and how they have some effects. So they do say that this Kratom plant is roughly 13 times more potent than morphine, so it definitely has that potential to really give somebody a high, or pack a kick, or if you are trying to use it for pain relief, as most will claim that they will use that because is stronger than morphine, as so is said. So just typically speaking, Kratom products have between dried leaf or powder, usually it's about 12 to 21 milligrams of the psychoactive substance per gram in the powder form. Resins are super concentrated, so they are higher, so they will have between 35 and 62 milligrams per gram. So definitely will pack more of a punch, almost twice as much as your powders or your leaf. And so then those drinks that I was talking about, that's referring to the ones in Malaysia, but we're seeing the same things here in the United States. They're about 22 to 25 milligrams per gram of psychoactive substance in those particular drinks. And they can certainly add more to them, like they can double the amount of kratom they put in it, or they can add oils or extracts, so those can get a lot higher than that, but that's typically where they're seeing those. All right, so as I talked about too, here is just an example. It's from a Kratom website that I found that talks about strains. So we're familiar, or should be familiar, with strains just like the cannabis industry. They say, different strains have different effects, and that's why you use different strains. And so here they're talking about the Bali strain, saying that that's more of a euphoric effect. If you get the green vein Kali, that's going to give you more of a stimulation effect, but it's also going to have painkiller attributes to it. The Mengda is for energy, and it also relieves pain. The red vein Kali is more of a sedative effect, so what you're going to see is more associated with opioids and opioid use. The ultra enhanced endo is strong euphoria, but it's also used to treat social anxiety, and so it's interesting how these companies will definitely throw that medical condition out there and say, if you need to treat your anxiety, use this strain, because that's what we will say will treat that. And then that white vein is also a euphoric effect, but also a disassociating effect. So disassociating mean that you are not, you're not feeling pain not because the pain's not there, but because the receptors in your brain are completely turned off to the pain. And so that is kind of like PCP. So PCP is a dissociative anesthetic, and that's why people appear to be stronger on the drug, or human, subhuman or whatnot strength, is because they're not feeling the pain. It doesn't mean the pain's not there, they're just not feeling it because their brain is completely turned off to that. So it's turned those receptors off. So as you can see, most Kratom products are identified either as a white, a red, a green, or a yellow/golden. So the white vein is going to have lower concentrations of your psychoactive substance. So those are viewed more as energizing or stimulant type strains. Your green strains are going to be somewhere in between your red and your white strain, so it's going to be more of a hybrid. And then as soon as you start going into the red strain, that's going to give you more of an opioid effect. It's going to be stronger, and it's going to have that pain relief that people are seeking. And then the yellow or the golden is kind of what they refer to as the ultimate kratom, because it's going to give, it's the strongest, it's going to give the most effect, and it is definitely a lot more powerful than everything else. So with that being said, when these grow, your white kratom is generally your younger leaves. So they are, picked off when they're fairly young or before they start to mature. Your green ones are going to be a little more mature, with your red ones being completely mature, and then your yellow ones being almost at the point of, extinction, if you will, because they are completely mature and they're falling off. So they're dried out and stuff like that. So the plant gets stronger, or the psychoactive properties in the plant get stronger as the plant develops and continues to grow. So I just wanted to give you kind of an example of these strains. So they do have kratom strains charts. If somebody's wanting to purchase different kratom products, they have different scales for what it's going to do for you or what it should do for you. So as you can see, it's hard to see, but that top is energy, and then even I'm having a hard time reading it. The third one down is pain relief, fourth is sedation, that's fifth is sedation, fourth is stimulation, and then the bottom one's relaxation. So I can't read that second one, but they do have, or they do rate them based upon, energy and pain relief and stimulation, sedation, relaxation. So if you've got a strain, or you've got an ailment, or you've got some sort of effect that you are desiring, you can go in, you can look at the products, and you can say, okay, obviously I want more relaxation, so I'm going to go with the red. Or I want stimulation, so I'm going to go with a green or a white. So you just look at those different things and you decide what kind of strain that you want. All right, so I talked about kind of the evolution of these. Here is just a strain comparison chart that just go over that they start very, the immature leaves are young and harvested, they come out white, and then before they reach full maturity, they are green, and then they go into yellow and red, where they start to mature and they get a little bit more psychoactive substance and property in them. Here is just another strains chart. As you can see, this one, the red is energy, yellow's mood, green's pain relief, blue is stimulation, purple is sedation, and that white is relaxation. They say it's a 1 to 10 scale, so you could look at this and say, okay, how much of what am I going to get? So if I want pain relief, I'm going to go and see kind of which strain gives me more pain relief. Or if I want stimulation, I could go and see which one has the longer bar, and then that is what I would tend to buy or purchase. So in small doses or low doses, again, those would be with your less mature plants or leaves, so your white or even your green a little bit, you will have a stimulant effect. They say that it helps energize, and so they are, promoting some of these things as a pre-workout type of substance to say, hey, if you really want a good workout, if you want to get the energy, then take this. They will also say that it will help with mental clarity, mental focus, stimulation. So if you've got things that you need to do and you need to work, use this, because it's going to be more kind of a daytime product that you want to use. So it's got lower doses in it, but it does have, stimulating effects to where your mind is getting altered, to where you're doing things. And so they also say that you can use this one for sociability. So if you have a hard time in social situations, you use this, it will give you more energy, you'll start to talk a lot more, you'll be a lot more open to interacting and engaging and being a lot more social. So, and then it's also kind of promoted as the same type of stimulating effects as caffeine. So energy, keeping you awake, giving you a lot more alertness and focus, etc. So that's in low doses or the less mature plants. So the more mature plants or higher doses, you will start to see that they do give opioid-like effects. So they start to become really relaxing and sedative. They act kind of like narcotics. You will see relaxation. They will say that this is kind of a strain that you should use more when you don't have things to do, or you at nighttime if you want to get some sleep. This will help with that sleep, so take this. Or just for general pain relief, where it will dull those pain sensations. And then you can go into a euphoric kind of dreamlike state. And so it will give you that high that is associated with heroin and opioids, and so you will feel a lot better. They do say that it probably doesn't provide the same sort of euphoria because it is a different chemical compound. It probably won't provide the same kind of euphoria as say something like heroin will, but it will get pretty close. So a lot of people who are using Kratom in place of heroin will still go back to the heroin because Kratom just doesn't do the trick as well. And then this will lead into overdoses and potentially deaths, because they will use the same amount of heroin that they were using before, not thinking my body's not used to heroin anymore. And so that will be what and why they do. So the reason that these have that high dose kind of opioid-like effects is because they do bind to the mu receptors in the brain, which are the opioid receptors, so they actually fit in there quite nicely. And so when there is a lot of a product going into the brain, it's binding to those receptors, and it is giving that similar or same type of effect. I know there was a question last time, and I said that it didn't really respond to Narcan. They are starting to see that it does respond to Narcan. I had a conversation with an ER doctor last week asking him, and they said initially they did not think that it would respond to like naloxone or Narcan, but because of the way that it binds to the opioid receptors, it will respond to it. It may take more Narcan to get it to respond, but they will respond. And so you can treat this with Narcan if somebody is having a Kratom overdose. So they just said that it was really uncertain for a long time, but the research is definitely out there, and it's been kind of within the last 6 months, because he did point me to a study that they did find that it reacted. Most of the studies are done in mice or rats, but they have found that it does respond to it, just not as efficiently as it responds to opioids, but because it does attach those opioid receptors, it will have the same effect. So just good information. So here are some of the reported effects, and again, it just depends on what strain you're taking and how much you're taking, but a lot of people are using that for opioid withdrawal because it helps with those symptoms. It's because it attaches to the same area of the brain, so it's giving the same sort of effects. Clearly that kind of, is an easy bridge to cross and make that connection. Has drowsiness, dreamlike mental states. Anxiety can be heightened, but it also can be lowered. So I guess some of that depends on how much you're using, the potency that you're using, and so how often you're using. So I talked about that increased sociability and the increased energy. So obviously, it's not going to happen. All of these things are not going to happen at once with one person, but it depends on how much they're using, what strain they're using, etc. Some of the negative things that they're seeing with that, you will have loss of motor control or coordination, and so they're starting to see a lot of tremors with use, where people are sometimes even going into full-blown seizures with use, but the tremors are definitely there in some people. You will see dizziness and confusion, nausea, vomiting, constipation, and decreased appetite. So they do see a lot of these individuals who are using Kratom products definitely get almost anorexic or anemic because they don't eat. They just stop eating. And the same is kind of true of opioid use. They lose their appetite and they quit eating because they're using products. So here I just found this quick fact guide. It's just more for demonstration and examples. It talks about everything that I just talked about, but those low doses are stimulants and energy, focused, alertness. High doses are pain, and euphoria, and then you can have all of those sedation the more you use and the more it gets. So they do say that it takes about 5 to 10 minutes for the product to actually start working, sometimes longer, just because if they are consuming it, it has to go through the metabolism process and get into the system. But they say that it can last from anywhere from 2 to 5 hours. But some of the stronger products they're saying can last from 6 to 8 hours. So you're kind of looking at pretty much a full day of effects and impact on the human body, depending again on use, strain, etc. So they did take a survey. This was from Johns Hopkins of about 3,000 Kratom users. They found that 84% of them had some sort of education in the sense that they went to college, and that most of them were about on average 40 years old. Interestingly enough, this survey found that 61% of them were women, so more people in this study were actually women than men, which is contrary to the previous study. But they did ask why they were using it. So as you can see, most of them, almost all of them, were using it for pain relief. So 91%, 67% were using it to treat anxiety, 64% were using it to treat depression, so over half. And then 41%, so just below half of them, were using it to treat opioid dependence. And so they didn't really have a whole lot of report of side effects, but 20% of them said that they had mild effects, less than 2% said they had serious effects, and then 10% said they had withdrawal symptoms. So they were experiencing that dependence and that withdrawal. So definitely some good information. It kind of is consistent with what we saw in the other study, with the exception of the men versus women. That could be just a sampling size issue. And again, because it's self-reported and because it's a survey, it could be underreported as well. But they definitely just did Kratom users. So it wasn't anybody who was, potentially not a Kratom user. These were all people, it was filtered for people who actually used Kratom here in the United States, to kind of get some insight into that. Okay, so as I said, in Southeast Asia, it was used for, Eastern medicine. I said the coughing, but it was also used for curing diarrhea, hypertension, muscle pains, etc. And then, of course, the field workers to boost their energy, alleviate pain, and even some management of mental health problems and fatigue. So definitely those Eastern areas and cultures have a different approach to mental health than we are starting to see here in the United States as well. So here's just another infographic that talks about some of the different things that Kratom does. This comes from a Kratom advertisement, so take that with what you will, because they are trying to sell a product. So they do say that that pain relief is very helpful for treating chronic pain conditions. As we see with a lot of these products, cannabis and hemp products are the same way. They really do focus on that pain aspect of it, because pain is hard to quantify. Like, you can't see pain. Pain is self-reported, and so people really hang on to that pain aspect as a reason to use or to use chronically. They do have that mood enhancement piece, so if it is sold as a a mood enhancer or a supplement or something like that, it's definitely going to get you high. They just don't come out and tell you this is going to get you high. So it has a psychoactive properties. If your mood is being different, if you're feeling different, if you have euphoria, etc., associated with use, it typically means that you're having some sort of psychoactive effect occurring within your brain. And so this one, again, promotes that use of these products for anxiety, depression, and stress. Again, not thinking about when the person stops using this, what kind of anxiety, stress, and depression they're going to then subsequently have, because the withdrawal is very similar to an opioid withdrawal, which we'll talk more about. So they do talk about that energy boost. This particular ad is saying, if you are going through opioid withdrawal, come use this product, because this product will be a good substitute for your opioid, and it will help tailor you off of your opioid drug use. Unfortunately, they do say that that is going to limit those adverse effects that you have with opioid withdrawal. They just don't tell you that you're then going to become dependent to the kratom, because when you withdraw, you're going to have the same effects. So, and again, they talk about it being a sleep aid. So if you're having trouble sleeping, then use this product because you'll get much better sleep. So advertisement. Here's another advertisement that talks about the benefits of kratom. That pain. Here it says it lowers blood pressure, boosts metabolism, and there are products that really do focus on that weight loss. And it's because you're not eating, but they're also saying that it boosts your metabolism and increases your energy, and so you'll lose weight using this product because you're not eating, because you're using the substance. So, and then it talks about helping with addiction to other substances, etc. So this one says it prevents diabetes. I think that's a pretty bold claim, but there's nothing to say that it does or it doesn't, but that's just how they sell these things and how they promote these things, especially when they're trying to get you to use this product instead of, prescribed medications or, Western medicine. So here are some just alleged medicinal effects, and I like that word alleged because, it's what they're claiming it does, but it doesn't have any sort of scientific support or research to say that it is doing these things. But that low blood sugar, I guess that's where the diabetes comment comes from. They say that it helps with your immune system, so you'll have a better immunity. You won't get sick as much if you're using this. It will reduce anxiety and depression, and it'll enhance that cognitive function. So if you're high and you're happy, obviously you don't have time to be anxious and depressed. You will be anxious and depressed when you're no longer high and happy, but that is why they like to promote these types of things. So as I talked about with, the drugs, they will promote these products as an alternate for other drug use. They will say that it is safer because it is a plant, because it is organic. Use this instead of those opioids or opiates. They will say you don't use those synthetic things, just use this because it's natural, and so it won't be as bad, and it's not as adversely recognized, and the same sort of stigma doesn't come with it if you're using kratom instead of these other drugs. So if you had a drug addiction, they say to use this in place of that. Even in Southeast Asia, they do use it for an opium addiction. We don't really see a whole lot of opium here in the United States because we have all of the other opioids and opiates. So opiums are, not a huge thing that we see a lot of, but we also see the heroin. So obviously this is a better alternative, or so they are claiming, not realizing that you could probably get yourself really deep into it as well. So it's often used, as I talked about, for self-treating conditions. Obviously, doctors are not prescribing this. Doctors don't know anything about this for the most part. And in fact, there is research that says that because their doctors are not being taught these types of things, they kind of go over the blood work. And they find that, I don't really know what's going on here because they don't have heroin in their system and they don't have opioids in their system. And so they're not recognizing this as kratom abuse or kratom use because most doctors are not trained to recognize kratom use because it wasn't a hugely popular thing up until recently. So I'm sure we'll see a shift in this. Doctors will start training on this and stuff like that, but they do have all of the different self-treatment of things. And here is just another study that has shown what they are using to self-medicate for. So from this study or this self-reported survey, they did say that 83% of those individuals were using it for opioid dependence and addiction. So that just supports that alternative theory that they're using it for another alternate to those drugs. 75%, so 3/4 were using it for pain, half were using it for energy, almost 70%, so 60%, 67% were using it for anxiety, 42% were using it for depression, 42% were also using it for substance use disorders, so replacing one substance with another substance, and then 25% for mood elevation and nootropic effects. So nootropic effects just basically means that they are effects, it's kind of like pheromones, how like pheromones are unique to one person. Nootropic is like, it's an effect or a drug effect that is unique to the person who's using it. So my high will be different than your high, that will be different than your high based upon how we use it because of that nootropic effect in our body. So even though like the science kind of says right now it could be helpful with opioid withdrawal, but it's just not very promising because it does act as an opioid. People do get addicted to it, and oftentimes, as I said before, people will not have the same sort of high that they want. It won't be as strong, it won't be as prominent, and so they'll often just resort back to their previous use because of that. So there is, it's not recognized right now by the DSM-5, and I'll talk about that right here in a few minutes, but they do have doctors and addictionists and treatment specialists saying that there is a kratom use disorder, and they just kind of like shift the DSM-5 criteria for a substance use disorder to fit kratom, and they are finding that that is occurring. So I'm guessing the next iteration of the DSM will probably have kratom in it as well, because they are seeing a significant increase for that. So as I said, a lot of the research has been limited. It's hard to get through review boards and ethic boards when you want to do studies. So a lot of the studies that they do have are all on rats and mice, which it's hard to really determine how it is that they're feeling or the pain that they're experiencing, because they don't talk to us, and so we don't get to have that feedback type of criteria. And then a lot of the other studies are just self-reported, and obviously there's a lot of different types of issues with self-report, just because people don't always report honestly. Some minimize, some maximize, some go above and beyond. Some don't answer things, and so it's hard to say if people are being truly honest or not on these things. So here are just some negative effects that go along with kratom. It can lead to long-term use. Chronic use can lead to hallucinations and mental functioning issues. So they have seen psychosis and psychotic breaks along with that, delusions associated with their use, confusion. They're also seeing, as I said, some of those neurological symptoms, so the tremors, the seizures, dizziness, drowsiness associated with that, and then that psychological and physiological dependence, so where people have to use because they are physiologically and psychologically dependent to the substance, and so they cannot stop using because they need it in order to maintain homeostasis. Otherwise, the body goes into a real bad deep dive, and we'll talk about the withdrawal here in just a little bit. So here are some of the negative physical effects that they're seeing with kratom use. So those effects really range from mild to severe. So some people are a lot worse off than others, but they do see, heart issues, cardiovascular, high blood pressure, gastrointestinal issues. So they're seeing nausea, vomiting, constipation, loss of appetite. So those situations where your entire gastrointestinal system is affected. And then those respiratory problems, so that goes along with opioids, is people will start to have slowed breathing, and potentially, if they have too much of it, can completely stop breathing and die. So the liver problems that they're seeing, they don't know how or why it's damaging the liver, but they are seeing that stronger liver problems are present in people who are multiple poly-use drug users. So those that are using a lot of different drugs, which makes sense because your liver clears everything out of your body. So they are seeing a lot of liver damage and problems with those individuals. Here are some other side effects. The more potent that the strain is and the longer that somebody uses, the more likely we'll see some of these long-term symptoms. So dry mouth, weight loss, anorexia, constipation will all kind of be seen. Here's just another infographic with some of the same information. However, it does have the added sweating and drowsiness, itching, which is really associated with opioid use. Like people who use heroin and opioids itch a lot. So they do see in people that use chronically and that use high potency stuff that they do have that same sort of itching that opioid users and heroin users also have. So not good stuff. Here's just a breakdown of some of those things I've already talked about, those skin itchiness that, you can get that acute toxicity, so you can overdose with these, and there's always a potential for death. They don't see a lot of deaths associated with this, and I'm wondering if some of that is just because it has not a lot of common use right now, but we're starting to see more and more use, but it also could be that it is not being associated with Kratom because they're then jumping ship and going to their previous drug of choice. So who knows, again, chicken or egg, but they are starting to see at least an increase in deaths associated with Kratom, even though it's not a large number, it's still a number. So as I talked about, with Kratom, there is that physical and psychological dependence, so it does lend itself to addiction. They have found in some of their surveys and research that about 50% of users who use regularly for at least 6 months develop some form of addiction to the Kratom product, so that they are becoming addicted to it, and that they have to use it, and they are experiencing some form of either or and psychological dependence, physical dependence, etc. And then if they stop using, they are finding that they are experiencing severe withdrawal symptoms, and then they go right back to it, just like they would with an opioid. So that they found too that the longer you use, the more potent products that you use, just like any other drug, really is going to lend itself to dependence and addiction, and that's really what's dangerous. So when we talk about Kratom addiction, this is really what it looks like. So obviously tolerance is an issue where individuals have to use more of the product to sustain the same sort of high or the same type of effects. And so really what they're saying is that when they started, especially when they were using lower doses, they found that they had a lot more energy and motivation, and that they were doing work and they were staying focused, but then the more they used and the longer they used, they were experiencing kind of that lack of motivation and kind of being lazy, and that also they were getting some psychiatric problems, potentially psychiatric breaks. And then they were demonstrating some physical impairments where their coordination wasn't great, their balance wasn't great, and so that's probably because they were using more of the product than originally contemplated. So some even say that because of that effect where their balance and their muscles are starting to become impacted, it makes some things really hard to do, difficult to do, some things even they say impossible to do. Okay. Also, they say that they are finding that these individuals are having more injuries because they are doing things while they're on the drug, and because of that disassociation where, basically, if you put your hand on a hot stove, your brain would say, ouch, that's hot, take it off. Because there is no association with that, you would be putting your hand on the stove and not taking it off because your brain's not telling you to do that. So same with injuries, ankle injuries, knee injuries. It doesn't mean the pain's not there, it's just your body's not recognizing the pain, and so it's not telling you to stop what you're doing. So more injuries are also occurring. It's same with opioids, you kind of see the same thing about that. So they're saying that severe weight loss, definitely at a much faster rate than any healthy person should lose weight, almost becoming anorexic or completely just, nothing because they're so skinny and small. I talked about those cognitive functioning, so they lose memory, they lose the ability to learn new things because the memory is not working, and they're not consolidating things that they learn, so there's definitely impairment in that because they're not remembering things later on because of that dampening of that. So also seeing that they are having poor performance on any sort of hand-eye coordination type of things because the visual and spatial recognition is not there anymore, or it's not combining itself. And then I talked about that withdrawal symptoms that are definitely similar or situated with opioid withdrawal. So here's some of the other psychological symptoms that they're seeing with addiction. So insomnia, depression, anxiety, irritability, hostility, mood swings, anger, all the things that were opposite of probably why most of these people started taking these substances to begin with. Because they needed it for sleep, they needed it for their depression, they needed it for their anxiety, they felt like they were in a euphoric state, so they weren't angry or hostile or irritable for that matter. So here's just another infographic that just shows all of those things, that they do have those side effects, and then signs of overdoses, basically drowsiness or even a coma, so they just lose complete consciousness. They become agitated, irritable, angry, mad, etc. The nausea that's associated with vomiting, and then sometimes those tremors will turn into full-blown seizures, and then they will have heart issues too because their heart starts, either beating way too fast or the blood pressure just goes through the roof. So that's the hypertension and the tachycardia that are associated with that. So you can overdose on Kratom for sure, and that is what they will see is either your body will go into a hyper state where everything is working really fast, like your heart, and you can't stop it, or you'll go kind of in the opposite where you'll just shut down and go into a coma and you'll stop breathing. So that's what's always scary with that. So as I talked about with the DSM-5, they do have to meet criteria in order to be diagnosed, but they are seeing the same type of things with this disorder. And as I said, they are kind of modifying what they're seeing in users of Kratom to fit the DSM diagnostic criteria, so they can treat them with that. So with that substance use disorder, here is kind of the criteria for that. So they are seeing people using longer than they had intended to use. They are using more product than they had intended to use, or their use is starting to either increase in frequency, or it is starting to increase in the amount they use at one sitting, so that tolerance. They do see that people start to have cravings associated with their use that they can't stop, sometimes just overwhelming cravings where until they get used they can't really concentrate or do anything else. And then people start to continue to use even though they are experiencing bad or adverse consequences. So whether that be socially or physically or environmentally, they are definitely seeing those types of things. And then I talked about too, so the FDA, their big warning is not only the risk of the substance use disorder, but they also talk about the risk of using products that have high levels of metals, that have salmonella in them or other types of bacteria, and then that liver toxicity and the seizures. So here's just another infographic with those signs of overdose, just so it can be recognized in people that are using, people who are confused or have delusions. Definitely that slowed breathing, that's a situation you're going to get them right to the hospital, because if you don't get them treatment or you don't get them Narcan or naloxone to try to overcome that, they could potentially die because they may just completely stop breathing altogether. And then we talked about that high blood pressure. That violent behavior is also associated with, because you're angry or irritable, and then you start lashing out because you just don't know what else to do with that type of emotion. So they do see people that start to fight with law enforcement, or start to fight with hospital staff or anybody trying to treat them, just because they are having that overdose because they have so much in their system. And then just that dry mouth, drowsiness, vomiting, chills, all of the things. Okay, so other just infographics with Kratom withdrawal, just so you can see it as well. They do see muscle aching, cramping, insomnia, fatigue, sweating, tremors, nausea, vomiting, anxiety, depression, diarrhea, watery eyes, runny nose, and hot flashes is kind of a complete list of all of the things that are common with Kratom withdrawal. So when they are in a withdrawal type of state, they do say that usually these things take care of themselves within 3 to 5 days. Not always, I guess, depending on how heavy of a user the person was. However, if they can't last the 3 days that it takes to get through this awful, all of that sounds awful, then they will just go back to use. So here is just a timeline that you can see. I said that 2 to 3 days, and then 7 to 10 days. It can be kind of the top end of that, where they'll have the intense craving. So that kratom does usually stay in the blood system. It can be longer depending on the strain, but 60 to 90 minutes. You'll experience your symptoms, and then when that's done, you'll start to experience withdrawal as your body tries to go back into homeostasis and tries to get back into a natural state. So here's just another one too, that just really gives that 0 to 24 hours. So the first 24 hours, you'll have fever, nausea, sweating, pain, visual distortions, anxiety, cravings. The 24 to 72 hours, so 2 to 3 days, you'll experience depression, anxiety, cravings, body pain, loss of appetite, shaking, loss of coordination, insomnia. And then after 72 hours for really heavy users, they'll see depression, anxiety, cravings, and tremors. So not good stuff for anybody. So you can treat it. They are seeing some, kind of limited treatment options because it hasn't had that same sort of scientific research, but they do find that a lot of the opioid type treatments are working. So they will do in facility treatments, residential treatments, where they detox the person, so get everything completely out of the system, clearing everything out, and then they will monitor them and watch them to make sure that they get through their symptoms, and then they'll associate that with counseling to get to the root of the problem and the issue. And so while they have residential facilities, they will let people do outpatient treatment if they have a strong support system. They say that if you do not have a strong outside support system, you're gonna have issues with your outpatient programs and probably relapse. Another thing with these types of kratom use is a lot of people like to use this over opioids and over heroin, because if they get frequently tested because they're on probation, or if they get frequently tested because of work, this will not show up in a traditional urine test. So you will have a negative result if you're using kratom products, because those are looking for opioids and opiates. They're not looking for the kratom itself because it's just enough of a different chemical structure. It can be detected in blood, urine, saliva samples. However, it has to have a lab that tests for that specific product. So there are not a lot of labs, at least not here in Wyoming, that test for that. Like if we have a kratom suspicion or something of the like for an impaired driving case, we will send the sample to Pennsylvania, which has got a really big lab that tests for almost everything, because we cannot test really for kratom here. So it's not regularly tested here, and so a lot of users will make that their drug of choice because they know that it's not really tested here. So it is a good alternative for them if they are getting drug tested, and even so much better than, say, the hemp-derived intoxicant products, because those will pop up on a drug screen as a cannabinoid. So these are different in the sense that they will usually not pop up. All right, so with that, just talking about safety issues, I addressed that it was not FDA approved, so there is no medicinal value or no use that it is recognized for. Because it's not FDA approved, it means it's not FDA regulated, and so these products can kind of, wild, wild west. Like they can kind of be whatever they want to be. They can kind of put whatever they want to put into it because there is no regulation. With not regulation, a lot of companies will say whatever they want to say about what it can cure and what it can treat. The FDA can come in and they can put a kibosh on that with a cease and desist, saying you're making medical claims that are not founded or scientifically supported, and so stop saying that. So what they do is they just stop saying it, or they change the language to say may instead of cures, or may do this. And so they really put that spin on that to help people understand that. I talked about the heavy metals and the harmful bacteria. Because those contain some of those harmful contaminants, oftentimes we don't know what those contaminants are going to look like for a person, and we don't even know what the contaminants are. So if you don't know what's in it, you don't know potentially what it could do to you later on down the road. And so they have seen that some of those contaminants definitely produce effects, side effects, etc., that are even impairing effects that are not necessarily associated with kratom. So you could have a completely different high than you were expecting because of the contaminant use. So if they're using like butane or propane to extract the or any type of other solvent to extract the drug or the psychoactive substance out of the leaf, then you're going to probably have some butane or propane poisoning or impairment associated with that. So just kind of scary things because you can't necessarily tell what you're going to get, and you may get a different product every time. So you may be purchasing the same product, but you may be getting a different product because they don't have that. And then they have a lot of that polysubstance use where people are using multiple drugs. And the more drugs that somebody uses, it kind of stands to reason and common sense would dictate. But the more people are using other things, the more negative effects that somebody is going to have. As I said before too, that kratom's not really well studied right now. It's becoming more popular. I definitely have found a lot more studies within the last 2 to 3 years that have been done and surveys that have been done to kind of understand things, but because it's not very well researched, we don't necessarily understand or truly know not only the long-term consequences of use, but they don't know the health, impacts for that, because we do not have any longitudinal studies, so we do not know what this is going to look like 20 years after. So we just kind of know more short-term things based upon what we're seeing. And with that said too, we don't really understand the intoxication effects because they vary so greatly, and they're wide range that we don't understand necessarily where those mental health issues are coming from or where those psychotic breaks are coming from. And so we don't really know kind of where we're going with that. And then I talked about physicians not being trained. So they're not recognizing it and they're not treating it. Because they're not recognizing it and they're not asking necessarily the right questions, because sometimes users don't associate this with opioid use and users don't associate this with heroin use. And so if somebody doesn't directly ask them, are you using kratom, they're probably not going to give their doctor too much information on that. And then the doctor's going to be left kind of scratching their head thinking like, what's going on here? Why am I not seeing these things? Okay, so as I said, it's gained popularity recently, mostly because of its euphoric effects, some of it because it is a legal, advertised, safe, organic product. It's an alternative to other harmful or more stigmatizing drugs of use. And so we are seeing that physical dependence. We're starting to see some national trends emerge where people are going to the hospital a little more often. We have seen an increase in deaths. And we definitely have seen an increase in sales. So lots more internet stores, lots more stores around our state selling it, etc. So as you can see, just a couple of years ago in 2019, Denver did report that they were seeing a public health concern because they were seeing more kratom-related calls to poison control. And it was a significant amount of more calls to poison control and a significant amount of more trips to the hospital, if you will. Here is just a good statistic. It only goes to 2015. I'm guessing it's going to be a lot higher now that we are 7-8 years out. But this is just from the National Poison Control where they have seen the incidences just spike. So even though it doesn't seem like, 250, 300 is a lot, compared to less than 50 in 2010 is pretty significant. Like you have seen, a 5-time increase from 2010 to 2015, so just in 5 years with that. They also, as I said, it's not very many people, or it doesn't seem like it's very many people, but they have seen a strong overdose death with kratom detected in, this is reported from the CDC back in 2019. So with that report, they did see that there were 25 fatal overdoses that were just involving kratom. And so they think that this this information and these statistics are really underreported, some of which because we don't test for kratom. So if the person doesn't know to test for kratom, like I said, it's not going to show up on a drug panel, and so they have to test specifically for kratom. And again, some people will switch over. So kratom-related death, but obviously it wasn't because of use. They'll go back to their heroin, they'll go back to their opioid, and they'll overdose because they're used to using kratom, and so they'll go back to their own type of use of the other substance. So definitely they say that these numbers are underestimated, and then they found in 2017 44 deaths related to use. So definitely something that we're seeing an increase in. So if we go from 2016 to 2017, we've seen almost double the deaths related to kratom use. So it doesn't seem like a lot of people, but enough that it is definitely causing a concern. And then we have seen a lot more. This is just a recent article where lawsuits are starting to spike up, where people are filing against kratom companies because they are starting to see deaths in loved ones, and so they're filing wrongful death suits. Here's another one from a lady outside of, it was reported here in Wyoming, but it was from a lady from outside of New York City, and so she definitely is in this pursuit of her, just filed it August 1st, so less than 2 or 3 months ago. So as I talked about too, it's pretty easy to access. They do like to sell it as a natural substance that is a good alternative. You can buy it pretty much in every state with the exception of those 6. You can get it online. Most of the online products will not sell to the states that it is banned, so they do have that restriction, but you can still get it online. And then we have a lot of retail chains that have that CBD kratom combination. So they are selling the hemp-derived intoxicants with the kratom because they go hand in hand with one another. A lot of these do have kind of a disclaimer that does say, you know, it's not intended to use or treat or cure or mitigate any sort of disease, illness, ailment, condition, etc. They put this on because it is the FDA warning that they are required to kind of have. It also keeps them away from liability if they are making other claims that it does cure, treat, mitigate some of these other things. So they do let you know they're not making any representation about the use, but they will make representations about the use, hoping that you do not read the fine print, the warning, or the disclaimer at the end. So as I said, here is just a picture. This is from a place in Colorado that sells these things. As you can see, not only are they relatively available, but it's relatively cheap. So 10 capsules for $8. 210 capsules for $110, so you can have your whole supply for however long, and then the grams of powder. So definitely a cheaper substitute to all of these other things. I'm going to kind of quickly go through some of these products. So as you can see, there are definitely a lot of different products out there that you can buy. This is usually how they're packaged. They either are in a pill bottle or they are in like a pouch like this. So that's usually where you'll see them on the shelves of the different dispensaries, etc. So here's just an example of them making it look a little more wholesome and a little more, you know, attractive and sophisticated. But they have these other different products that, you know, Happy Go Leafy, and they definitely have the different like reds and greens and whites and yellows. And then like this one, it just tells you what it's used for. So as you can see, kind of in the middle right, this one says best for serenity and energy, and the other one says best for comfort and focus. And so it really is helping the buyer definitely purchase something that is more tuned to what they want and the effects that they desire. Here is this, looks very much like those hemp-derived intoxicants that we were talking about. This is kratom powder, making a limited edition, so people will hopefully go and buy. Definitely tapping into that consumer science of making something available for a short amount of time so people will purchase more or get better, greater quantities. They have them in little, like the sticks that you see that you mix like with your water, or you just put it in your water and you mix it. They're in those little powder pouches. And so they definitely have a lot of different ways that it's convenient for the user to have them. So most people would not look at that and think kratom. They would probably just think that somebody was using a water enhancer of sorts, because that's what those look like. So here are just some examples of the powders. Again, as you can see, they have them at the Kratom spot, they have them in the different colors, so white, green, red, yellow, or gold. And I had shown you that where they were telling you what it's used for and how it's used. So definitely packaged a little more organically, but they do kind of have the fun stuff too. So if you don't want that, you can get a seltzer. So they have a whole bunch of different seltzers and cold brews that you can purchase for drink as an alternative to alcohol that I talked about earlier. And then if that won't do it for you because you don't want to drink a whole drink, then you can get something that looks like an energy drink. And so interestingly enough, that fill-free, I was in Texas and they were giving that stuff away at the tailgate. And so I went and found it. Tracy knows that I was talking about it at the last presentation I gave. I was like, everybody was like, people were taking it and they were like, it's gonna give you energy, and so drink this, and they were giving it to kids and youth. And like, I grabbed one and I just wanted to see what was on it because I was like, herbal supplement, that cannot be good. The rest of my group grabbed one too, and I was like, it has kratom and kava in it, stay away. And so I told everybody to either throw their bottle away or, you know, dispose of it to where somebody else can't have it, because that is just not good stuff. So they were literally giving it away for free in Austin, Texas at the tailgate right outside of the stadium in hopes that people would use it and like it and go find it and buy it elsewhere. Here's just another example of more energy drinks. They look exactly like 5-Hour Energies. Really hard to tell the difference. Lots of these are sold at gas stations, so just start looking when you go to the gas station. You kind of don't see them because, you know, we always turn blind eyes to things where, you know, if we're not looking for something, we usually don't see it. If we're not going to get a 5-Hour Energy drink, you're probably not going to look for this. And so they're there, we just don't see them there. So they do have them in edible form. Here are some just kratom gummies, produced by the Cannabis Bakehouse, so definitely that association with the two. Koi is a very popular hemp-derived intoxicant brand. You guys have the Koi products at your Platt Hemp Company here in Rollins. I haven't checked to see if they have these kratom ones, but they are making and selling the same thing. You can get nice little cute caramel chews that have kratom in them. They have coffee, so they make them in K-cups as a coffee substitute or like a tea. They definitely have advertisements comparing the two, essentially telling you this is not even, it's just coffee, or it's related to coffee and it's not bad. So try this instead of coffee, use this instead. So they have kind of like the botanical looking things, and here are some drink mixes. Again, they have the green, the red, the white, and they add flavor to it, so it gets rid of the bad taste. But you know, made by nature, perfected by us. So definitely an interesting product that they sell them. And then there's companies that make them all. So this one has not only the capsules, but they have the 5-Hour Energy, they have the powder. This other one that I showed you earlier with all the powders, they also have the capsules, they have chocolates, they have gummies, they have tea. This one is gaining popularity in Torrington. In their CBD shop, they have a whole entire display on a bookshelf of all of these Happy Hippo kratom products. So they are being sold here in Wyoming. They have taffy, they have caramel chews, they have the energy drinks, they have powders, they have stuff to mix with other drinks. So they have everything, definitely like that. They do also have the vape pens that you can get if you prefer to have a vape or a high. So that quick kick K-bar, at first I was like, oh, a K-bar, is that like a granola bar or what is it? No, K-bar is just a vape pen. So they're stickers, and they have that at that Torrington vape shop as well, which is why I decided to look into it to see what it was. But their claim to fame is that they are the first kratom vape product. So good on them, whole plant kratom vape. Here is just the other one, another FDA disclosure that they put on that. They do try to encourage people to not have it if they're under the age of 18, but they also have the 21 and over for those that have the great restrictions. And then everything that you would see, like say on the tobacco label, like don't use when you're pregnant or nursing, consult with a physician if you have a serious medical condition, and then you can't get that in these 6 states. So Alabama, Arkansas, Indiana, Rhode Island, Vermont, and Wisconsin, you cannot get these. And so they're letting you know they won't ship to that. So here is just the Village. It's opening up in Colorado Springs. So just an example of one of these bars. It is a kava and a kratom bar that you can go into and get products and purchase products. So a lot of these bars, most of these advertisements are from other states, but I just wanted to give you guys an example of what you can go in and get. You can buy it in bulk, you can buy it in brews. And so it gives you like a whole bunch of different things. You can get it by your, your strain, your brand, whatever you want, your effects. Some of these bars look just like a brewery where they have taps. Pints are about the same amount of money as a regular beer would be. So not super expensive to get what you want to drink, and then they will serve it to you. Red, white plus, green, red, whatever. So then they have mixes of drinks. They used to have one of these type of bars in Casper. It got closed, but I'm understanding that they're going to be opening up another one of these places in Casper. And so they will have the drinks that look very much like alcohol cocktails. So they have the different infusions and the different signature drinks, so go in and buy those. Interestingly enough, you can see that a lot of the names are associated with cannabis type products like the Pineapple Express, Nightcap, Supercharged, just kind of tells you what it's going to do to you and what effects you're going to get. Some have tea shops, so they have the boba teas that are very attractive to some kids and younger individuals. And so you can get all these different teas or boba teas that look like it. So here's another one that has lattes. So they also are into the kind of coffee type of industry. So they have taken over the alcohol industry, the coffee industry, and the tea industry, and kind of like are popping up everywhere. They're really becoming very popular in Denver and in Fort Collins. And so you can find them kind of along the I-25 corridor down there in Denver, because cannabis wasn't enough. Here's just an infographic that I think is very telling of what they're trying to sell. So here for this Kratom rotation planner, this company wants you to use different things, and it's giving you an entire 4 weeks of how to use your Kratom, when to use your Kratom, how to combine it, etc., and what colors to use on what days for the maximum effects that you could possibly get. So it's really kind of disgusting if you look at it. So they do have Kratom dosage charts where it tells you how much powder, capsules, extract, etc., what to use, what experience you want to get. If you want a mild dose or a strong dose or a very strong dose, in case strong is not good enough for you, it will tell you how much to use. You go from 2 to 3 capsules to 16 to 24 capsules. So definitely a very wide range of your effects and the amount that you're going to use. Here's just another example of a dosing chart. This tells you the results and the type of users. So newbies at the beginning of their Kratom journey start with 1 to 2 grams, and then very experienced adult users, not for the old and the weak, go to the 6 to 8 grams. So it will tell you the results, etc. I know that there's a lot of information on a lot of these slides. I'm happy to provide copies of these guys to you all so you can just look at them. And here's just another example of a dosing chart, depending on if you're a beginner or if you want something that's extra strong. So as I said, these go hand in hand with the CBD products and the cannabis products. So here's just a storefront that is called CBD Kratom. It's a pretty big internet store as well. And so they sell a lot of products together. Those intoxicants are all there. As you can see, this store had not only the teas, but it also has the CBDs for the oils, the tinctures, etc. Now for here in Rollins, I did a search for Kratom, and here are the 3 places that you can definitely find it, but I guarantee you can probably find it in most of your gas stations. So Smoker Friendly, the cigarette store, and then that Platt Hemp and Vape Company, so you can get those. They have even queries online. This is from the Platt Hemp and Vape Company. Do you sell Kratom? Who does in Rollins? Yes, sir, we absolutely do sell Kratom. We have gel, powder, shot, seltzer. Come on down and check out our stock. So the other question that was asked a year before, do you sell powdered Kratom? Yes, as a matter of fact, we do sell powdered Kratom. We also have Kratom shots, capsules, and gel packets. So here in Rollins, you can get all of these substances that you want. If you don't want to order it, you can just go and get it. And the great thing about Plat Hemp Company is they will deliver to you. So you can go online and you can purchase your product, and then they will deliver it to your house or your place of business or wherever. So here is just from Smoker Friendly, the same question was posed: do these people sell Kratom? If so, how much and around how much? And they posted back, yes, several brands, powders, drinks, pills, extract. So you can get it on Amazon. Here is just a bunch of different products that you can have sold to your house or sent to your house through your Amazon Prime. You can get it relatively quickly, in 2 days for some of these things, because they do have the Prime 3-day delivery. Here is another just larger quantity of it. You can buy that for sure. And then I talked about the gas station. So this was an article that came out, talking about how the gas station is their new drug dealer. So interesting stuff. So as we wrap up real quickly, clearly Kratom is a dangerous substance. It's acknowledged as such, the DEA, the FDA, even some of the other countries, and it does have those serious side effects of drug dependence, addiction, withdrawal, and even potential overdose. As I talked about, it's not FDA regulated, so it doesn't treat anything specific. It is not approved for any sort of medical condition, and because it's not regulated, it's not determined safe. Because it's not regulated, we don't know what's in it, we don't know potencies, we don't know anything of that nature. FDA warns against its use, and even says that it's not appropriate. It says when added to food, it's an unsafe additive, not a dietary supplement, so people shouldn't be advertising it as a dietary supplement, even though they do. And so there's no reasonable assurance that you won't get sick or injured or suffer severe consequences because of it. So, well, I skipped that one too. So just more of the same, listed as a drug of concern, no potential therapeutic benefits, unregulated, which increases the potential risk. And it also increases people seeing it or observing it as a safe product, because they think they can get it relatively available, relatively cheap, and that leads people to believe that it's safe. So it is a concerning threat. We're seeing a lot more overdoses. We're seeing a lot more adverse consequences with it. They're definitely moving towards, I would not be surprised if the DSM has a Kratom dependence soon with their next iteration of the DSM when it comes out as a 6. And so all of the stuff that I talked about with the opioids and stuff like that. So has the same sort of risks and concerns as opioids, because the same sort of things can cause those things. So that's why you all are here, is just to be educated and to provide education to your community on these things, because that misnomer that because I can get it down the street or because I can get it at the gas station, like I think the gas station component or the Amazon component, because I can get it here, it must be safe, because these people would not sell me something that's not safe, right? So those are just kind of the concerns. So apologies for going a little over. I just wanted to make sure that I got through it all. Here is my contact information. That's my cell phone number and my email address. If you need to get a hold of me for anything, or if you have any questions or you want some of the studies or whatever, please feel free to get a hold of me and I'll be happy to send it all to you. Okay. I didn't drink much of my water, which is unusual for me. I just talked fast. Questions? Does anybody have any questions?
There's no questions.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us.